Brad DACUS. Yeah, woo! He's kind of our hero around here in Orange County because every time we find something that's really wrong and the only way it's going to get resolved is legally, we call Brad. Because Brad DACUS is the president, the head founder of Pacific Justice Institute. It's a group of lawyers that take on an immoral issue that needs to be it's only going to be resolved if you go through the system. So he has this team of lawyers and they do this free. So if any of you ever have an issue that you know is really serious, Brad DACUS is your go-to guy. But what's even better about Brad, in my opinion, well, maybe not better, but at least as good, he likes to come and talk to you guys. So he is just a fabulous, wonderful friend. Please give him applause.
Thank you very much. It's great to be here. You know, I had a fun, I have a really warped sense of humor. I mean, I was back there, she starts the introduction, and I tell the other people in the green room, I say, so what do you guys think I should talk about? It was so nice. Anyway, I just think my wife has to live with this humor, so. So anyway, we have a lot of challenges facing us today, but I want to remind us all that it's not the time to throw in the towel. It's not the time to give up. And the reason I say that is because oftentimes we get discouraged, right? And we almost get in this huddle mentality. I call it the post-rapture mentality. And you know what I'm saying? Sort of like, okay, we need to get our bread, our Bible, and our guns, our bullets, and find a little place out in the middle of nowhere and, bunker down. But what we forget is that it's the wrong chapter. We're not in that chapter. The rapture hasn't happened. You haven't been left behind, So I want us to start with that, with the good news, because Satan wants nothing more than for us to have fear, and for fear to dominate our lives, to let anger dominate our lives. And when we read the Word, we can see that that's not the prescription, but the love of Christ controls us or compels us, having concluded this, that Christ died for all, and God wants us to reach out to all. And he also, though, wants us to be wise. And that's where it comes in today. That's why we're here today, because that love of Christ compels us to have knowledge and to be wise, if not for our sake, for the sake of our children, our grandchildren, for everyone's children, because we want God to be glorified, we want the truth to be known, and we want people, especially the children, to be protected. And so I'm going to talk to you today about some of the challenges that I see taking place and why they're important challenges, but also why we should definitely not give up. First, how many have heard of Pacific Justice Institute before? Raise your hand. Oh, thank you very much. How many get our press releases or our email updates? Raise your hand. Okay, wow, okay. So you know half my speech already, okay. But no, I'm really encouraged by that. If you do not receive our case updates, our email press releases, or the like, on that yellow sheet, the form, everyone should fill that out. Click legislation. That's going to be the key for us to keep you updated about that and our cases as well. Be sure and click legislation. And if you want to be extra sure and have some other boxes to check, you can fill this blue form out at our table over there to the left in the back, okay? Outside, so feel free to do that. Now, what are some of the challenges that we've seen take place in terms of legislation and how we're having to deal with that? I've got a lot of case stories to tell you about, but I want to address some of these examples of the challenge of what we're dealing with. The first bill, legislation, is the one, and the worst, is the one that never was. You're saying, what are you talking about? Well, you already had a speaker talk and address Common Core, okay? But the reality is that came through the back door and has impacted because we didn't have a full yes and no as a society. It just sort of came in. And yet it poses such a serious threat, I believe, in so many ways. First, you have, of course, the academic concern. You have, as has been mentioned, you also have the privacy concern and the violation of privacy through the usage of this material given to third parties. And we at Pacific Justice are watching that to see if we can see if that is implemented in a way that identifies and violates the privacy of an individual child, which is what we're looking for. Then we have grounds to challenge that. But my biggest concern is the indoctrination that we're going to see take place through these what's called critical reading and writing assignments to promote critical thinking. Now, what's interesting about their critical thinking is that they have you read one story, one little op-ed piece, or could be from the government, from the EPA, because you can trust them. Anyway, and they read that, and then they write their critical analysis of it. Well, wait a minute. In order to really have critical thinking, you need to have the other opinion, right? But they don't have the other opinion, and who chooses these articles? Teachers, and many activist teachers that see this as an opportunity for indoctrination. So I think that the spiritual warfare in our public education, as we know it today in most of the states, is going to be accelerating dramatically. And it's already accelerated tremendously in our schools already. But I think that's a serious challenge that needs to be taken seriously. A little redundancy there, but I have to stress it. And so we have that. That's real. It's material. And I want to encourage us on the fact that I also think it's terminal. People say, wait a minute, what's he saying terminal for? I think it's terminal. I think it's inevitable that it's going to be diced and sliced and eliminated eventually. And I think part of that reason is because the growing grassroots of Americans. Last poll, 71% of people polled have a negative view perspective of Common Core. 71%. So, and I'll be honest with you, I didn't see any commercials attacking it. I didn't get any flyer in the mail, any letter with "open this now." It's just what it is. It's people are getting educated, and they're seeing the results. And so I think that's a good point. Also, we have other states that are not doing it. In fact, more and more states are opting out. And as long as you've got the big state of Texas opting out, and which will be choosing alternative standardized testing for colleges and things like that, you have a comparison. And with a comparison, everything rises to the surface as to whether something's working or not. It's like an experiment. When you have a study or experiment, you have this group that gets the drug, then you get this group, the placebo, that don't get the drug, called Common Core. And Texans are taking the placebo. Well, they know what it's a placebo. They're not taking the drug. And so I think we're going to see a stark reality and contrast. So that I want to start off. The worst bill is the one that really never was, and instead has made its way through the back door in a terrible way. Another piece of legislation that I have tremendous concern over is legislation that has been passed recently, just not long ago at all, and that was dealing with the prohibition of counseling. It's illegal for anyone under the age of 18 in the state of California to be able to get any kind of counseling that in any way steers them away from same-sex attraction or same-sex sexual activities. That's the law. It applies to clergy, by the way, who are licensed counselors. I mean, this is draconian. This is something like you'd heard, and this is the way it was in the former Soviet Union, boys and girls. No, that's how it is right here in California. Now, the good news, with the exception of New Jersey, other states haven't adopted this yet. I mean, in New Jersey, I'm sure they have probably a liberal legislature, and liberal governor, or who's our governor, New Jersey? You signed this into Chris Christie? Is that what you? Oh well. I'm having fun. So, anyway, but the point is, it's serious, and we at Pacific Justice are litigating that as I speak. We are litigating that. We've taken that on behalf of the kids. Another piece of horrific legislation that has become law that needs to be addressed. And by the way, I think being involved in legislation is real important. Getting people elected is important. Because if we don't do it on that end, then we at Pacific Justice Institute have to do it on the back end. We have to we have to litigate it, we have to go in the courts. And I'm going to tell you something, relying on a judge in the Ninth Circuit, it's not my dream city, okay? If I was in Texas and I had the Fifth Circuit, you know, where it's Billy Bob who goes to church with me, you know, Sunday morning, you know, different situation here in California. So I strongly encourage you to get involved, not just in keeping track of what's happening in terms of litigation, but be involved in helping us get good people elected, because that's what cuts it off and prevents us from having to litigate. But anyway, the next legislation I want to talk about is dealing with boys being able to go in girls' bathrooms and locker rooms. How many have heard about that? That's right. Okay, now I know who's sleeping, okay? Because everyone's heard of that, right? It's outrageous. A teenage boy being able to go into a girl's bathroom, locker room, or showers. We are litigating that right now. And so we're litigating that in terms of defending the repeal that many of you signed to get on the ballot, right? And then we had about 130,000 signatures were thrown out, just thrown out, for reasons like your signature looks different than when you registered to vote last. Now, that really bothers me, because one of the attorneys in our office, he had eye surgery, and so his signature looked different than the last time he registered to vote. So he found out in a test sampling that his signature was disqualified on this petition. It's a bad one to disqualify, because he's the one who's been leading our litigation front on this. Really bad move. I mean, he really took it personally, as he should. Another reason they're disqualifying, by the way, is we found out is if you fill out the name and address for your spouse and then have them sign it, which is what I do, okay? I mean, come on, where's the kids? Here, honey, here, sign this. This is the, okay, where's the, okay, all right. If you do that, theirs is disqualified and yours is disqualified. Now just think to yourselves, I'm actually going to ask you, how many of you did that? Fill it out for your, okay, that was a large portion. And yet a judge, I believe it's in Indiana, I think it was Gary, Indiana, through that and a number of other reasons for disqualifying something that was going on the ballot there as being an intrusion and a hindrance to the democratic process. So we're hoping that the judge hearing the matter in our court, in our case, will view it the same. Also want to let you know, as many of you know now, we have worked and we've drafted a petition. Kevin Snyder, our chief counsel attorney, did a great job. He drafted it, and we spent a lot of time working on it. It's a petition to put this on the ballot in 2016, but not just to deal with the kids' bathrooms and restrooms, deal with all public bathrooms and restrooms and showers. So we're hopeful that we'll see that come through and have a real positive difference in protecting kids. And why is it real important? I'll tell you why it's important, because not just for our kids here and privacy. We've already seen multiple examples where it's been violated. Boys and girls have violated it. In a case down in Carlsbad, there's a case where a girl went into the locker room, just took off her clothes in front of a 14-year-old boy, and he went out of the locker room screaming and yet, no. Anyway, but we found out about it, and the parents didn't want to move forward with it, and we have to respect what parents want and what they feel is appropriate for their child, but the boys' parents. But nonetheless, it's going both ways. L.A., it's over San Francisco, Irvine. There's someone who I go to church with, and he's on the administrative faculty for the Irvine School District. And when I first told him about this, he says, well, Brad, we don't have to worry about that in my school district. I know you're trying to help me here, but not in my school district, no. You know what he told me just a few months ago? He says, Brad, like 2 months ago, I think it was. He goes, Brad, guess what? It's come to our school district. These girls came out screaming from the locker room. This boy came in, and this is the law, and now we're being affected. I mean, so it's impacting in our state, but also if we don't address it and get it nipped, it's going to be in other states as well. And it's going to be impacting a lot of kids. I think those with their agenda is moving too fast in a way that's possibly going to hurt them. When you have a movement, if you go too fast, it's like a bridge too far. It can have a counter effect. If you turn up the water too fast, too high, the frog jumps. And I think that may be what they're doing here. We'll see. But it's something we want to be sensitive to and aware of. We also want to make sure we do our messaging correctly because, how many of you hate transgenders and wish they were treated and brutalized and mistreated? Okay, I don't see any hands going up. No one hates transgenders, right? They have gender identity dysphoria, usually. It's a real mental condition. There's nothing genetic about it. They're not born with, it's not where that rare condition where people are born with certain things and they have to make decisions. It's not that. It's a mental condition. They didn't ask for it. They need love, compassion, counseling, understanding. They need Jesus and the grace and love of Jesus. God takes everyone right where they are, including the transgenders. And so we need to have compassion. I know I was interviewed by CBS Good Morning America, or morning show, Sunday morning show, and the reporter, which is very much on the other side, she kept making her position, and I kept giving her the same basic soundbite, which is, he says, we need to recognize that those who have gender identity dysphoria didn't ask for this condition. It's a real mental condition, and they need love and compassion and counseling and respect. But we need to balance that, of course, with also the young 13 or 14-year-old girl in a locker room in a high school gym who has just taken off her clothes to get in the shower, and in come prancing in a 16-year-old biological boy who strips his clothes off right in front of her. Now, compassion, but also a specific visualization of what's happening to someone over here, being visually violated. I call this the emperor has no clothes doctrine. Because what they're asking us to do is pretend that something is that isn't, and at the expense of those who are the most vulnerable and susceptible at such a young, early age as our kids in schools. So that's something that we need to be addressing, and we are. And we cannot give up on that. Stakes are simply too high. By the way, if anyone knows anyone who is specifically victimized visually or otherwise in a public school, gym, or a shower, please contact us, because that is a privacy issue, and we might be able to bring a separate action in federal court for violation of privacy as well. That's something we're looking at. We also came very close last year to witnessing the passage of a law that would have banned state tax-exempt status for every nonprofit youth organization that does not hire homosexuals or transgenders youth leaders. Now, who did it apply to? It would apply to the Boy Scouts. In fact, they put Boy Scouts in the legislation by name. They want to make sure they want to get those Boy Scouts. But don't worry, it also would apply to Awanas, Young Life, Youth for Christ, all these Christian organizations. And so it almost passed. It got the 2/3 votes that it needed in the state Senate, because it's actually a revenue. It deals with state tax-exempt status, so you have to have 2/3 in both chambers. So it got a 2/3 in the state Senate, and then in the state assembly, every Republican held their ground, and 2 Democrats decided not to vote, and it went short. He needed to get 2 Republicans, so they fell 4 short in the state assembly. But that's how close it passed. They needed a 2/3 majority. And if this passed, what do you think they would go after next? I'll tell you what they go next. Not just the nonprofit youth organizations, every nonprofit organization, including the one we're sitting in right now. Every church and synagogue would be on the chopping block. Unless, that is, they compromise their teaching to comply with the edicts and philosophy of the state. What does that remind you of? Once again, it looks like I'm going back through history. This used to be the Soviet Union, this was the recognized state church of China, and yet that's what we're on the brink of having. And fortunately, it did not pass, and this legislative year, it definitely has no chance had no chance because they lost seats. And so that's helpful. And I say they, just meaning those who are on the other side, not to be Republican or Democrat. Just be careful there, okay? That's right. No political endorsement was intended by this comment, nor the speakers nor the participants at this time. Okay. Anyway, I think I have the same video, right? Yeah, definitely. No endorsement was intended. But we have some other challenges that we're facing right now, and I want to touch on those briefly before my time's out. AB 277, that's the vaccination bill. We've weighed in on that, along with many others who are here, I'm sure. Now, does that mean, is the issue whether vaccines are bad? Is that what the issue is? No, not at all. My kids, I've had them vaccinated with some vaccines, and some others, I've said no, and I'm an attorney. So when the nurse after the baby is born says, okay, we need to give him vaccinations, we need this one, I said, no, not that one. They said, no, you have to do it. I said, no, excuse me, I'm an attorney, I know my rights. You don't give him that vaccination or there's gonna be consequences. So, okay, yes, sir. So, no problem. When you're an attorney, everyone's real friendly to you, you know? I don't know, I mean, we're just real nice people. Our friendly, Anyway, so that was great. I know what my rights are. And I said, this vaccine, but not this one. And by the way, you're not gonna give them all at once. We're gonna give them in stages. And that's how we do it. That's my research, that's what I discovered. Others say no vaccines until the age of this, or whatever, or because you know your child. The issue is one of parents' rights. Who loves that child more than anyone else? The parents. And they are the ones who are the ones who should be making that decision. They know that child's coughing. They know that child's health. They know about all the issues. They can get multiple opinions and come up with their own decision and conclusion. So this is very important. Right now, we have a conscience exception. And the problem is, if California goes through with this, we will be the most rigid state in the country when it comes to this issue of vaccination. And it applies to public schools. I think if they want to do something, they should amend it to say, if there is a breakout in one school of some kid who has measles, say for example, then those school districts within a 2 or 3 or 5 mile radius may choose to require children to be vaccinated for that in order to prevent. There's things you can do on a localized level that are much more reasonable. Plus, when you have the herd, what's called the herd vaccination, which we already have as a state, you can't have an epidemic. It is scientifically impossible when you have the herd level of vaccination, which is what it is. Nationally, it's about 97.5%. And the herd vaccination is anywhere between 92 and 95%. So I think that's it's important. And even if you're like, you like vaccines, you think they're wonderful, go vaccines, give me a V, okay. Okay. Even if you're in that category, you want to be sensitive to this. This is important because this is about parents' rights. And it's an institution that was created by God and even recognized by our Supreme Court in a number of cases, so that warrant us to respect it to this day. So we also have another bill called SB 128. It's the euthanasia or physician-assisted suicide bill. I'm very concerned that this could become law. We already see it in Oregon. We've already seen the fruits of it. People who say they're assessed to be terminally ill, say in 6 months, and they're seemingly very healthy, and they have themselves killed. And the reason they have themselves killed oftentimes is because of the fact that they feel guilty. It's a psychological condition. You feel guilty. I don't want to be a burden on anyone, so the noble thing for me to do is to have myself killed. And you as a parent would have nothing to do with it. If they're 18, too bad. And I think that's an atrocity, terrible atrocity. It's a devaluation of human life, and which is what we're talking about here. And it's ironic because the pro-life movement is gaining steam overall in the United States. Statistically, as far as public opinion, as well as legislatively, it's gaining steam. And I believe we're just one justice on the Supreme Court away from reversing Roe versus Wade. So tremendous, yeah. So, I mean, maybe Kennedy can have a dream or a vision or a nightmare. I don't know. I don't care what it is. We'll see. But so a road to Washington experience or something. But the euthanasia and physician-assisted suicide is clearly going in the other direction, and it's already tested in Oregon and other states. And I believe the most common, easiest argument to make against it is say, look, why rush this? We have several states that are moving on this. Let's wait. California's a huge state. Let's let the experiment happen. Let's see if we really want this. Let's see if the results in impacting lives is what we really want. That's sort of the secular argument. But the moralist argument is one which recognizes the laws of nature and nature's God. That to live, to be born naturally, and to die naturally, as God has ordained and planned, as He has affirmed in His Word. That is the proper mentality. And it's also just human dignity. If you want to take a true humanist perspective, you want to respect the dignity of human life, you can make that argument, although humanism actually cheapens human life, so you don't want to go down that road probably. But you can make a humanitarian argument at least. And so that's important. Human life is precious, and it shouldn't be looked down upon. And then finally, I want to touch on AB 775. This is something, now here we have the state of Texas that passes wonderful legislation to make it really hard for abortion clinics to function unless they're close to a hospital that is willing to deal with emergency cases. And I mean, abortions are shrinking in that state. I mean, their drought, by the way, is going away, okay, just so you know. I think there's a reason, okay. Our state, we have this legislation, which would require pro-life clinics to post notices of the rights of the client to have a patient to have an abortion. And thank you, I appreciate that. Oh, okay, thank you. I was waiting for the numbers, so that was good. So anyway, so that's real important and that's real basic. And I just wanted that we need to address that. We need to challenge that. We at Pacific Justice are defending a pro-life clinic right now as I speak up in Vacaville. They were prevented from moving into an office simply because it was right across from Planned Parenthood. And so we're now challenging that and going to task with that. Bottom line, folks, as I said before, now is not the time to surrender. Now is the time to get involved. When we get to heaven, the question is not going to be how did our precinct vote. The question is not going to be how did our state respond to a legislation. The question is, were we faithful with what we did? Did we fight the good fight? The Apostle Paul says, made it really clear that he kept the faith. I fought the good fight. I finished the course. I've kept the faith. Let that be the exhortation to each of us. No matter what the challenge, no matter what the era, no matter where we are in history's path, let it always be said, always, that we kept the faith. Thank you very much. God bless.